no creamer. It was kind of fun. Coffee weirdo like that. All right. Well, I suppose. Let's see here. Let me hit. All right, Aaron. I suppose let's get started, and anybody that's on as we get going here, like I said, go ahead and write in the chat bar there, and I can respond as we go, and we'll ask questions or what have you. So, Aaron, without further ado, let's get this underway.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nate, and welcome, Hardscape Nation. I'm Aaron Ausen. I work on the Rosetta sales team along with Hardscape Nate and our other folks. Nate approached me with this idea about having this live feed book club, motivational club, pick-me-up club, and I thought it was a great idea. I thought it was a great way for us to interact, particularly in the midst of this COVID-19 stuff and where we're at in that journey, if we're still trying to muster up jobs or if we're locked in our houses like we are, you're probably looking for things to do and things to better yourself with. So I think this is a great way for us to get it going. And so I want to welcome you all. Thank you all for taking the time. Nate, you got anything?
You know, like you said, we're locked in the house, and I think one of the most important things that we can do just as human beings is to not get in a slump, not just say, hey, we're here for the next 2 weeks. Let's chill out on the couch and watch all the Netflix we can. We really need, let's keep some sort of regular routine going, or at least put together somewhat of a routine, especially as salespeople, because this is going to end. And we're all going to go back to work, and it's really hard to get back into that routine if we've slumped it for the last month. But I think this is a great way, to at least to start you and I doing this for the next, every Monday, I think is what we talked about, at least until the COVID quarantine is over, and then we'll adjust from there. But no better time to grow as a group or as a family, to learn together, to share together. I think that's what I look forward to the most with these here.
Yeah, I think it's a good point that you bring up about, we should stay in a routine. We should stay in some kind of normalcy as we're trying to fight for some kind of normalcy as a nation. We really have to try to do that. I mean, I know, like for me personally, last week, it was tough because I was watching and reacting, and I'll be honest, it was almost like a shot of a week just because you were learning and reacting. Well, now I think we've gone comfortable and we understand now that we're going to be in this situation at least for a little while here. Hopefully it's not as long as they're projecting, but we have to get back to normalcy. And what better of a way than to learn and to react with each other and interact in this space. I mean, because we can interact in this digital space. We don't have to be next to each other. The 6-foot spacing can get further and further if we need to. We can still interact via the web and via the phone. So that's great.
Yeah, and it's the fear of the unknown, right? I mean, that's what I think. By nature, we are a pack, right? Humans are pack creatures. We want to be around other people. Yeah. And I think that this is a great way to interact. We're in it together, right? And so let's share, let's talk, let's interact just like we are. You nailed it.
Yeah, exactly. So to get started, what we're going to do is we're going to look at different books, and feel free to chime in on any books that you want us to take a look at. This one today, what we're going to talk about is called Great at Work. It's written by Morton T. Hansen, who's a PhD doctorate from Stanford Business School, now operates at Cal Berkeley. But in 2011, he had his own private consulting group, and they created a survey. In the survey, they interviewed about 5,000 managers and employees from across the nation, from 22 different sectors and 15 sectors and 22 different facets. So 22 different job sets to try to pool and understand what makes people better than others, why certain people operate at a higher level than others. Is it the culture? Is it just the personal drive? Is it the money? I mean, obviously we have to talk about the money. What is it that makes people excel? I mean, oftentimes you do think it's the money, but it's probably not the money. I think personally. So what he talks about is really, really good principles and how we can change our mindset so that if we are not operating at our highest potential, some things that we can do to get there. He collaborated with Jim Collins, and if you'll know Jim Collins, it'll probably ring some bells in your head, particularly the book Good to Great. He actually collaborated on another book with Jim called Great by Choice. Yeah.
Right.
So these two guys are forefront, they're paving the way for a new kind of mindset in this workspace. And I know, I work on the manufacturing side with our producers from Rosetta, and a common quip, no matter what you're talking about, if you're making hardscapes, putting in hardscapes, making boxes, good help is hard to find, and it's even harder to retain. So we as managers, owners, we have to ask ourselves, how can we unlock that extra potential? And that's what this book is about, is unlocking that potential. Today, we're going to talk about the first section, particularly just a principle in that first section, section 1, mastering your own work. And what we think about often, I know it doesn't matter what you're doing. I think in a learning aspect, there's an old saying that it takes 10,000 hours of practice to master a skill. That's our work harder convention. I remember when I worked at my plant with my dad, he always told me, you're going to start from the bottom and you're going to work your way up. And it's going to take you hours and days and years to understand what it is, this thing called precast concrete. Well, I mean, there is some truth to that, I think. It does take, obviously the more hours, the more time you put in, the better you're going to be. I can't deny that at all. But when it comes to learning a skill, 10,000 hours may not be the best way to think about that. The book uses an analogy of a golfer that wants to become a pro golfer. And they say that at one point in time, to become a pro golfer, you can either go out to a driving range for 10,000 hours and just hit golf ball after golf ball after golf ball. You'll probably get better, yeah. But are you getting better in the right way? Or is there a faster way to get there? And so this is actually a real person. What he did was he went out and he said, okay, today I'm going to work on drive. So I'm going to take out my big dog. I'm going to let my big dog eat. I'm going to hit it. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to measure the distance. And then I'm going to look at some film. I'm going to bring in some consultants. I'm going to ask them what they think about it. And then I'm going to revise. And then I'm going to do it again. I think that's a great way to think about it. Nate, have you seen that on the install side, on the hardscape side?
I'm going to use at least one analogy that I was always growing up with is I'm a muskie fisherman. And it's synonymous, muskie fishing is synonymous with the statement that it's the fish of 10,000 casts, that you won't catch your first one until after 10,000 casts. And it's great because that's obviously where this has come from. So we see it a lot just really in the training of our personnel. I think I see a lot that the methodology and the concept to train new people on job sites is to just put them out there and have them working and do it. And over time they'll figure it out and they'll be able to, now be a crew leader or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I see it a lot. This methodology is very strong in our industry.
Well, I think but whether you're installing or you're manufacturing, the mindset is the same. I'm going to put somebody somewhere. Maybe I'm going to have him job shadow somebody, and I'm just going to assume that over time he's going to figure it out or she's going to figure it out. But then a couple months down the line, we're sitting here complaining that our crew is not operating at high efficiency. We're not getting the most out of our days, and we're wondering why that is. And I think what it boils down to is that we just didn't do the right job training. We didn't do the right things, the right activities to train that person properly. So what we do is we think about, and the book explains this really well, this learning loop principle. Think about it in a circular fashion. What we're going to do is we're going to do something. We're going to set out an experiment. We're going to say we want somebody to learn to hit a nail with a hammer. Okay, so we're going to teach them how to hit a nail on a hammer. We can give them a hammer and a handful of nails and say, go ahead and try to do it. Or we can actually show them how to hold the hammer. We can have them hit one nail and see how far they hit it into the wood. We can measure that, okay? So that's the second step. We measure how far they hit into the wood. We then give them feedback, which is the third step. We say, okay, maybe you should adjust your grip. Maybe the hammer needs to be changed if we're changing the application. Let's think about this differently, okay? So then they take that feedback and then they modify their approach. Maybe they reach back further. They change that grip up and they hit it harder. And then they measure it. Goes in maybe a half an inch further, okay? So now we've started it back over because obviously our end goal is that we want them to hit it in with the least amount of wax because that's going to be the fastest amount of time. So we got to keep going through that whole entire circle over and over again until we get the optimal work out of that job. So apply that into the real world. If we're going to hire somebody to do something, we have to be very specific on how we do it. Specific tasks, do it, measure the result, give them feedback as the expert, as you are the expert, modify what they're doing, and then redo it until you get to that finish line. Okay, so that's the concept that we're trying to teach here, is that learning loop principle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's really for everybody that was able to make it to the producer meeting. This is really a great concept that ties along with the action plan, because that's what it is, right? It's we go out and we do certain actions. We're measuring them based on be it sales or be it level of interest or whatever it may be, and we get that feedback. We modify how we maybe our sales pitch or how we go after them, the different types of information we're getting them, and then we redo it or we change it up, right? That whole modify and then redo that step. This is every function of our life, let alone sales or production or construction. I like the learning loop. I find myself, I can see in that what I do on a daily basis. I can see what I'm doing. I can actually understand that I'm measuring things and I'm getting that feedback, and I modify and redo.
Well, I think another thing to remember too is that there is going to be failure within that loop. I mean, obviously you're not going to get the desired results right out the gate. Maybe you do, and if you do, you're damn lucky. But there's going to be little failures in there, and you have to account for that, and you have to be acceptable to that, because ultimately the little failures are going to be turning into successes. Whereas if you just kind of put somebody into a situation and say, go at it and learn what you can, down the road, that's going to be a big failure. That's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you time. So little failures are fine. Big failures are not fine. We have to think about that.
You got to determine where your measure point is at, your feedback point is at, right? To make that modification so that those issues are small and not big. Yep.
Yeah. So just to give you some specific examples on how to achieve this learning loop, and these are proven examples of how certain people have blocked off their time or done things in certain ways to make this learning loop be effective. First one is carve out 15, and that just means carve out time in a day. Put it on your calendar to do, whether you're the teacher or you're the learner, carve out that time in a day. Actually dedicate time, whether it's 15 minutes every Monday or 10 minutes every day, whatever it is, carve out time in your calendar to learn that skill, to teach that skill to somebody. Block off that time. Because if you say, I'll just do it next week, you're not going to do it. You have to put it on your calendar. You have to make it a point in your day that you're going to dedicate that time from 10 a.m. to 10:15 to be a better person or to learn a new skill. So think about that. That's a huge one. That's what I do personally. That's how I get stuff done. That's how I learn new techniques, is I have to actually put it on my calendar.
Well, and you can wrap your head around that. I mean, 15 minutes, it's a simple concept. Seems like a small amount of time to focus on one thing. So you're not like, wow, I'm going to spend all day or I'm going to spend 2 days doing this. I have 15 minutes that I can put on the calendar, focus on this, go back to some other tasks, and then reschedule 15 minutes. It's really, it seems far more attainable to a lot of people.
Yep. Next one is chunk it. And chunk it means just working in teams. I think as teams, we get a lot more done than if we're doing it on our own. So chunking it just means work in a team. So you can't do this in every skill, but if you can certainly take advantage of it. If you have maybe 2 people to teach instead of 1, or if you're on the learning side, if you can get 2 teachers, 2 different inputs, you're going to get 2 different ways to figure something out. And that's a good way to think about it as well. So chunk it's number 2. Number 3, measure the soft. Measure the soft is basically measuring your soft skills. So if you need to learn a technique, like maybe you need to become a better listener, and there isn't really a school. You can't get on udemy.com and learn how to be a better listener. There's not a college course for that. That comes with learning your soft skills, learning how to be a better listener. Maybe understanding that you got to make better eye contact with the person that you're talking to. Maybe it's learning how to drown out the outside noise. You have to be able to measure those soft skills and adapt and change to those. Personally, I'm a terrible listener, so I find myself all the time measuring my soft. My soft is horrible, but it's something that I constantly work on. It's I'm going to be in that learning loop probably until the day they put me in a pine box down underground. I'm still going to be measuring myself. They don't do pine boxes anymore, I don't think anymore. I think they actually do regular boxes now, yeah.
I think you're dating yourself.
That's my attempt at Wisconsin humor. Number 4, get feedback. I mean, feedback is probably the greatest tool that's available, and it's free. Ask your friend, ask your wife, ask your kids. Get a different perspective in what you're doing. That's one of the greatest things. We get so entrapped in what we're doing that we just put these blinders on, and we just have this hard-nosed mindset. I'm just going to muscle through it. Take 2 steps back, give it to your wife, give it to your spouse, give it to your boss, give it to your grandpa if you got one, whatever. Say, what do you think about this? Just give me your honest feedback on what you think about this. I'm trying to maybe do this new design on this modern look on this patio. What do you think about this? What would you change? So that's a huge aspect.
Well, and I think I like the feedback one because what it forces that person to also have to do is be open to feedback. And when you open yourself up to hear feedback or the criticism, and not in a bad way, right? But constructive criticism, you start to look at things in a different light. You're hearing what everybody else is looking at or how they see it. And you adapt. So I love the feedback because it forces people to get out of, like you said, having the blinders on that their way is the only way, and they can start to see different avenues, different views. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too. I agree. Feedback is huge, and we don't often take advantage of it. We don't seek out that feedback. We just try to muscle through it, and that's a big mistake that leads to a bigger failure. You'd be surprised how much feedback an honest little 8-year-old kid can give you. Take anything that you can get. Number 5, dig the dip. We go back to the learning loop, and we understand that we're going to have little failures here and there. We're going to have little dips in our curve. So if we think about our growth and our growth curve, it's always moving up, right? We're never moving down. We're going to have little dips in there, but we turn it back around and we keep moving forward. That's a huge aspect. Don't stop, because your next attempt after a failure is probably going to be your success. So never stop moving forward. The last one is confront that stall point, and that's go on to the next slide. Is best depicted in a graph, and this graph actually comes straight from this book. And this is a great graph. I absolutely love this graph, and this is something we can email it to you, or you can share it. You can print it off, keep it in your office, in your truck, whatever. But it's a great way to think about how we as a people hire manufacturing workers, construction workers, landscapers. What we do is we can either follow 2 paths. The first path, which we tend to follow more often than not, is the lower one. It's mindless repetition. We plug that person into a job and we say, go and do it. Or go follow Billy for 2 months and he'll teach you everything. That's what we do. That's our nature. We have too much on our plate. We can't get it all done to do proper training, proper onboarding. We just say, go get it done. Well, you'll see, and this is proven statistics over time, obviously everybody starts at a poor position because they don't know anything about what they're doing. They're hired fresh off the street. So they're in the poor position. We move them in the mindless repetition phase. The best that they're ever going to be is an average worker. That's going to be somebody who shows up generally more than 50% of the time, not much more than that. They do the work. They don't excel. They just kind of there. They're warm zombies, if you will. That's what that worker is. So the second way to do it is we have good onboarding. We have pretty good training. That's the second curve. So now we're doing a better trend. We're taking that poor person. We're bringing them up to that very good stage, but we hit a stall point. We hit a point where we feel like that person is adequate. They know everything that they need to know. They're at a level where I want them to be. Maybe it's a floor manager if you're on the manufacturing side, or a crew leader on the install side, on the construction side. And we were like, okay, we're done. That's it. We're just going to let them go. Now, these are the guys that are going to show up every day. They're going to do work for you. They're going to make you money. It's going to be okay. But you commonly ask yourself, God, I'm getting tired of doing all this other work on the side, and I have to do it because all my other guys are out doing their other stuff. Well, you're left with that gap, right? Because you didn't take the extra time to teach those extra skills to make that person an excellent worker, to make that person empowered to do their own thinking, to do their own reacting. So if you got a set of workers out there that are great workers, come in every day, get their stuff done, but they're constantly calling you saying, hey, I don't know what to do about this. Hey, I ran into this. That's that stall point that they can't get beyond because they can't think for themselves. That's where you need to push beyond teaching them the general job set and teach them things like problem solving. Teach them things like solving problems like quickly, reacting quickly, sales skills, soft skills, some of the things that you don't think about all the time.
And you nailed it with the statement of empowerment. You have to give them the ability to make decisions and understand that, we're all human, so there's going to be a mistake. But when there's empowerment, there's that that feeling of belief in that person, which they're going to push themselves because they don't want to fail. They don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to make the wrong decision. It's going to happen, but they're going to push themselves to make the best decision, and there's going to be that buy-in, that drive to want to be the person that leads the company forward, and you're gonna and that's going to push you past the stall point, right? I mean, buy-in is huge, and empowerment in those employees and in your people is a key point to that.
I think more often than not, we tend to fear that a little bit, that empowerment. We fear that if we put the power into people, they're going to overrun us. They're going to become smarter than us. That is a fear. That is a legitimate fear that you're going to have to fear. But I think more often than not, the more empowered people are, the better the culture you're going to have and the more teamwork you're going to have. I think there's more good in that than there is going to be bad. Can it bite you in the butt? Yeah, it probably can. But like we said, it's the empowerment and it's making that culture, that teamwork. Them not wanting to fail is that best practice, that best bring home topic. They don't want to fail, so you're not going to fail.
Yeah. There's the old saying, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. Because if you just surround yourself with a bunch of people that are going to agree with you and only think to your level, you're not going to grow as a leader or as a company. But if you elevate those people and allow them to expand, and you fill around yourself, bring people around you that can elevate you as a leader, that drives the whole company up. And I don't buy into the fear of that. The greatest thing that can happen is the greatest compliment, let's really be honest here, is you may have somebody that you have working for you, whether it's a foreman or a lead guy or plant manager or whatever, sales manager, that is you're coaching and you're mentoring, right? The part of the family, the part of the workforce, that your family, and they've been able to elevate themselves to a level that helps them grow. And let's say they move on, they go somewhere else, or they start something on their own. That's ultimately a compliment. That's not, in my in my view, that's not a fear, and you shouldn't fear that because they have brought you to an elevation, right? They've helped that company get to a point, and for them to grow further, they had to move on. That tells me as a leader that I'm doing something right, because ultimately I want everybody around me to grow to those levels, and if I can do that, that means everybody all the way down as the beginning employee, I know that I've got those skills to help elevate and bring them up and bring myself up. You're going to be surrounded at some point with a whole team of people that you're proud of and that are helping move the company forward and that you don't have to worry about. Don't worry about the one that eventually says, you know what, I've gotten to a point where, I'm going to start my own company, or I need to move to something bigger. That's the compliment. That tells you that your leadership skills are there, right? Yeah. That's my take on it.
No, I think that's a very true statement. I think it's on the manufacturing side. I think you see there's a lot of fear in that empowering, because it's you don't want them to overrun and maybe take your job as like maybe a floor manager or something like that. So but I think you're right. I mean, the greatest compliment that you can get is for somebody to learn the skills that's necessary to push beyond working for you and go on their own, and then yes, raise that bar up, because you've just empowered somebody to do things at your level and try to push it even higher. So all they're going to do is raise that bar up. They're not going to lower it. They're going to raise it up.
Correct. And if you've trained somebody well enough to take over as floor manager, if your leadership has gotten, has brought the rest of the crew up in that fashion where they're capable, intelligent, trustworthy, all that stuff that can create them to be the floor manager, the leadership above you sees that, and you're not going to get overlooked. And I think that's where that fear comes.
You shouldn't.
Correct. In true leadership, that person then becomes the next step up, and the person that was trained to take over that spot comes up. Everybody grows. Man, oh man, it's my favorite thing. You elevate people around you, and you will be elevated yourself. And people just need to trust and have faith, right? Have faith that is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Amen.
We've dug into a lot. We're going pretty deep into that topic there. I love this. I think that we're taking small snippets of the book, and we're going to move on, and we'll talk about where we're going to go next inside of Great at Work, because we want you to follow along. We want you to be asking questions in the chat, or say, hey, can we hit on this part of what I read, and make this a little bit more interactive. So this is something that I really enjoy. I do want to confront an elephant in the room, because I don't know if everybody's on HD or not, but yes, I do. I haven't shaved. Instead of the no shave November, I figured during the quarantine at home, I'm going to go a no shave quarantine at home, or at least until my wife kicks me out. So Aaron, the challenge has been laid down. We'll see how this grows. I'm not notorious for great beards, but we're going to give it a shot.
I think we're going to look like ZZ Top here in a couple months. At least I know I will.
Maybe our ratings will go up.
Challenge accepted. Put it that way, brother. Challenge accepted.
So, Aaron, where are we going next? What part of the book? What sections? What pages? Chapters for everybody?
Well, I think we'll stay in the same section. We're going to stay in section 1, but I think what we'll talk about next time. Let's go to the P squared principle, which is the very next chapter. We'll talk about the P squared principle next, and then the following week we'll bounce back and talk about handling the objection from top down, trying to, what we say, do less than obsess, where we often try to get into trying to do too much. We set very vague goals and we just kind of meander through our journey. Let's trim those goals down. Let's do less and let's obsess. That's a great way to think about things. We'd never do it in life, and we need to start doing it if we're going to be efficient and we're going to make some great money at this. So Do less than obsessed is where our kind of our comfort blanket around it. P squared next, and then we're going to talk about handling objections from top down.
So P squared, and that's what chapter is that? So everybody knows.
Give me 2 seconds. That is chapter 5.
So chapter 5, and we're going to go live again. Same bat channel, same bat time. We're going to do 11:30 again next Monday.
Yep. Works for me.
Awesome. Aaron, thank you. Everybody that's on and watching, I appreciate it. I'm sure Aaron appreciates it.
Yeah,
and,
thank you. This is great.
We keep growing as a group, as a family.
Love it. Sounds good. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Awesome.
Have a great week, guys.
Take it easy.
Bye.